So, J. Ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, Stacey Margaret Jones, I'll give you a hint. The Infinite Improbability Drive.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
You are absolutely correct. Thought I was.
Welcome to Between the Covers, where we are discussing one lovable book per week until we build J. Ruud's list of the 100 most lovable novels in the English language. And this week, I guess we're talking about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because I guessed it in one hint. Because basically, I know you love that book, and that hint seemed like it was in that vein. However, I would like to know the other hints that you had prepared. I wouldn't like your hard work to go to waste.
Well, thank you for that consideration. My second clue is going to be Babblefish.
Oh, okay. If you'd started with that, I wouldn't have known.
And my third clue is going to be 42.
Oh, I would have known 42, obviously.
That's why I saved it to last.
You say that all the time. All right. So who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Douglas Adams.
Okay. Do you remember if I've read this book?
I don't remember if you've read it. I don't think you've read it.
I don't think I have. I just think you've talked about it a lot. And there was a movie, right, that we saw?
Yeah, we saw something on TV, I think.
No, there was a movie we went to in the theater. Wasn't Bilbo in it?
Yes.
Okay.
But I thought he was in the one that was on TV. But
I
maybe
think we saw that in the theater.
All right.
Anyway, all right. So Douglas Adams wrote Hitchhiker's Guide. Is it the or
It's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
And when did this lovable book come out?
It came out in 1979.
Okay.
And I mean, we're talking about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but in including that, I'm kind of including all of its sequels as well, because it's really a kind of continuing story.
Oh, okay. How many sequels are there?
There are 5. There's actually 6, but he didn't write the last one because it was written after he had died. But there are 5 that he wrote. It's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which came out in 1980, Life, the Universe, and Everything, which came out in 1982, which, by the way, is what 42 is the answer to. The meaning of life, the universe, and everything.
Right.
So long and thanks for all the fish, which is the message the dolphins leave when they leave Earth because they realize it's about to be destroyed, and they leave that for the humans. That came out in 1984. And then Mostly Harmless, which came out in 1992. Mostly Harmless is when Arthur Dent asks his friend...
Who is Arthur Dent?
Arthur Dent is the protagonist of the story, and his friend Ford Prefect is actually an alien who's been living on Earth for 15 years, doing research for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he asks Arthur Dent what The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has to say about the Earth. He says mostly harmless.
Oh, okay.
That's the entry for Earth in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay. Well, let's back up a little bit because we haven't talked about what other lists this book is on, because you are curating your list based on other people's rankings of, best books in English, best, et cetera, best novels in English. And you've read through a lot of these lists, and that's how you are making yours. So who else thinks this book is a great book or a book that people should be reading?
Well, it's not on a lot of lists.
You're kidding, because it seems like it's very important to you.
Well, and a lot of other people. I mean, the original book has sold more than 14 million copies worldwide.
Oh, wow.
But... yeah, the greatest novels lists tend to have a bias against unabashedly comic books, which this definitely is. However, Waterstone's Books and Channel 4 in the UK produced a list of 100 greatest books of the century in 1996, which included Hitchhiker's Guide at number 24. It was ranked number 2 on NPR's list of the top 100 science fiction fantasy books. And in the BBC's Big Read of 2003, which tried to identify the UK's best-loved book by reader votes, Hitchhiker's Guide came in as number 4. In copycat Big Read compilations in other countries, Hitchhiker's Guide was number 8 in Australia, number 11 in Bulgaria, number 24 in Canada, number 39 in Germany, and number 78 in Hungary.
Oh, wow.
It was also number 99 on Entertainment Weekly's list of the top 100 novels. So it does have a pretty good record.
People like it.
People like it. People love it.
The book has some bona fides, right?
It does indeed.
So before you talk about the down and dirty summary, which I hope you have prepared for, when did you read this book? Because it seems really, knowing you, this book is formative for you, I think. You talk about it a lot. It's your Roman Empire, maybe, in a way. I don't know. Maybe. But I'm just curious about when you read it.
It was in the 1980s sometime. It wasn't immediately after it came out.
Okay.
But it was not long afterwards.
Okay. All right. So hit me with the down and dirty summary, and we'll see if you get the trombones of shame or the harps of glory. Harps of glory.
Okay. So, Arthur Dent, an Englishman from the West Country, is rescued by his friend Ford Prefect from the destruction of the planet Earth, which is how the book actually begins, pretty much, with the destruction of Earth and all of its human population by a fleet of Vogons who are demolishing the Earth to make way for a hyperspace expressway. And Ford and Arthur actually... Okay, I'm trying to give the down and dirty.
You have to remind yourself 20 seconds in.
Ford and Arthur are able to stow away on a Vogon ship. And while they're on the ship, Ford discloses that he's actually an alien from a small planet near Betelgeuse, who for 15 years has been disguised as an unemployed actor from Guildford, doing research on Earth for an intergalactic encyclopedia called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Of course, the Vogons discover the stowaways and expel them from their ship through an airlock in the middle of space. Fortunately, a spaceship called the Heart of Gold, piloted by Ford's semi-cousin Zaphod Beeblebrox, who happens to be the president of the galaxy, happens to be passing by, having used its infinite improbability drive, and rescues the two stowaways. So, in the middle of space, this ship picks them up, just happens to be coming by because of its infinite improbability drive, because this is almost this is infinitely improbable, almost. Okay, so that's the basic.
Okay, you pulled it off at the very end, but you were getting into let's talk about the details of the book territory there. So I'll give you Harps of Glory, but just barely. All right, so why is this book lovable?
Well, there are several reasons. I think one is just the clever use of language that Douglas Adams has. This originally it was a radio program on BBC Radio that he had written.
Funny to me, but I guess I always thought of him as an American author. I just had no idea that he was British.
No, it's quite British.
I guess that shows I haven't read it, because if I'd read it, I would know.
True. So he wrote it for a serialized radio program, but it was so popular that he published a novel along the lines of the radio program, and then that was so popular he published another. Well, actually, the first one ends with a straight lead-in to the second book, which is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, because Zaphod takes his spaceship after he's picked them up and after they've had another exploration of another planet, and says, well, let's have a bite at the restaurant at the end of the universe. And that's how the book ends. And so the next book is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which begins, this is, I suppose, a part of just the clever use of language. At the beginning of the restaurant, at the end of the universe, it sums up the story so far. And the story so far is, in the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. And it goes on. But one of the most famous quotations from the novel shows something about Adams's comic use of language. The Vogon ships have come to destroy Earth, basically. And they're, all parked outside the Earth's atmosphere. And it says, the ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't.
I know, you've quoted that a lot. You just love that line.
It's a great line.
A lot. I've seen it other places, so I agree with you. Have you read any Piers Anthony books? They're a fantasy series about Xanth, Xanth.
I have not.
The way that you talk about Adam's language and kind of maybe some of the views about humanity and culture, it reminds me of that series of books, because Anthony has a lot of kind of fun language, and that's. I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but anymore. I mean, I was as a teen, but those books I read more into adulthood because of the language. So I see what you're talking about there. Is that just the delight?
Yeah, there is a real delight in the language, and but it goes further than just that. It's there's also a parody of serious science fiction, which is funny enough. And Adams actually started his career as a script editor for Doctor Who.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, he's familiar with actual science fiction. And this is a parody of a lot of what goes on. But more than that, his books lampoon contemporary Western society. And they pessimistically but humorously poke holes in the search for the ultimate meaning of life. And I mean, that's where the 42 joke comes in. In this first book, you learn that 7 million years ago, this great computer was created. Greatest computer that has ever been, or it turns out to be the second greatest computer that has ever been. But anyway, they ask the computer, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? And the computer says, let me think on that for a while. And 7 million years later, the computer comes out with its answer. And people know that the answer is coming. After 7 million years, the answer is coming. And so they're waiting, and out comes the answer, 42. And then they have trouble figuring out how exactly that works. And so they have to ask the computer another question, which is, what is the exact question that 42 is the answer to? So it's
48 minus 6.
I guess I need to think about that for a while. So there's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
which you like, because you are kind of irreverent and iconoclastic in your tastes.
Moi?
So I could see, obviously, that's going to be appealing. It's like, it also reminds me of Tom Robbins. You've read books by him,
yeah,
where they're kind of poking fun at things, but with this facility with language that's, so engaging.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some poking fun at that kind of questioning, but there's also poking fun at human beings' views of themselves, because one of the things that Arthur learns as he's flying through space as the only survivor of the destruction of Earth is that human beings thought they were the smartest creature on Earth, but they were wrong. In fact, here's a quotation from the book. For instance, Adams writes, on the planet Earth, man had always assumed that he was more intelligent than dolphins because he had achieved so much: the wheel, New York, wars, and so on. Whilst all the dolphins had ever done was muck about in the water having a good time. But conversely, the dolphins had always believed that they were far more intelligent than man for precisely the same reasons.
Right. So what matters is, what is your rubric? Right? What are you measuring by? Because anybody can say they're more successful than somebody else when they just apply the measurement that gives them success, right?
Yeah. As far as the dolphins are concerned,
right,
having fun is more important than anything else.
It sounds
certainly
like
more important than having wars.
I would say that's probably most people's idea of success, is being able to get up and muck about all day and have plenty to eat and go to sleep.
Exactly.
So that is interesting. That's funny.
But
well,
it turns out that even the dolphins are not the most intelligent creature on Earth.
Is this a spoiler?
Nah. Nothing's a spoiler because
I love how you say that. Like,
things just keep going
I want to talk
on.
about it, so it's not a spoiler.
Things just keep going on.
What is the most intelligent?
Well, Zaphod had stolen this spaceship. He is the president of the galaxy, but the president of the galaxy has no actual powers. He's just kind of a figurehead. And this spaceship, the Heart of Gold, with the infinite improbability drive, had been created, and on the day that it's revealed, he actually steals it. He steals it because he wants to find the legendary planet of Magrathia, which no one has ever been to, and it's kind of a legend. But its inhabitants became incredibly wealthy millions of years ago by custom building planets for special customers who came and said, I want a planet that does this. And they figure it out and they build one. And it turns out the Magrathians were the ones who designed the Earth for the most intelligent species on Earth.
Was it cockroaches or rats?
Close. It's mice. The mice are the most intelligent beings on Earth. They designed the Earth. They wanted the Earth designed as a giant living computer. And they had tricked human beings into thinking that they were using mice for scientific experiments, when in fact the mice were using the humans for scientific experiments that the humans didn't realize was happening.
An awful lot of mice had to die.
Well,
Sorry, mice.
They were martyrs to the cause,
They were martyrs.
And unfortunately, when the computer Earth was 5 minutes from finally reaching the solution to the problem it was designed to answer, the Vogons came and destroyed the planet, which explains why when Zaphod and his passengers reach Magrathia, the designers there are hard at work building a new Earth for their mice clients.
Well, yeah, I thought it was rats, because rats are, as we know, very intelligent, and they work hard.
They do.
Mice work hard, too. Interesting. Okay, well, that's very... I love how it does... literature is something that you can read at various levels, right? And we've talked about this before, where you can go back to a literary work and find more in it, especially as you age and experience more and your own perspective opens up. But even this, literature even, I think, can be read, on various levels in one reading. Like, you can read this for plot and language and, the page turner feeling of it, right? I can't wait to see what happens next. But if you stop and think, it's really holding a mirror up to how we see ourselves and the assumptions we make about ourselves, and what those assumptions allow us or encourage us to do.
Yeah. If you believe that you are, you've been designed to be the master of all you survey, then you can do whatever you want to mice,
right,
or dolphins.
Right. And, that's very interesting, because people don't see themselves as animals, and we are, of course, animals. I think a lot about this, like, if we were something else looking at our planet, and we looked down and saw the cities that people build, and like cities that are growing a lot now, or, and how another being might be like, oh, I have another human infestation here, right? Like, I can't stop it. It just keeps growing, We act like that on the planet. We just take over things and infest.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to think about it in that way. Like, we're just living here. It's a planet for mice.
Or it's a planet for all
Dolphins.
animals.
Right. Right. Which I think is probably closer to. Do you think that's the kind of message behind the book? I don't want to act like it's didactic or when it isn't. I haven't read it. So.
Well, no, it's not didactic at all, but it does suggest these things like, you think you're so smart. You're not.
Right.
You think you're in charge of everything. You're not. You
Well,
don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, because like I said, our assumptions limit our perceptions. We
Yeah.
make assumptions and then we act on them when actually we have so much more to learn.
Yeah.
Well, and what's that phenomenon, the Dunning-Kruger effect, that the least informed is often the most confident?
Yeah. There's that. There's a lot of that going on in the book. At the very beginning of the book, this is one of the interesting ironies. In the very beginning of Hitchhiker's Guide, Arthur Dent's his house is about to be demolished by these bulldozers that show up. And he says, "What are you doing?" And they say, "Well, we have to get rid of your house because there's a freeway that's going to come through here." And he says, "I never heard anything about it." And they tell him, "Well, the blueprints have been on file in the basement of City Hall for weeks. Why didn't you just look there?" Which obviously there was no way for him to do that. And this is just the sort of the blind government doing what it wants to do. But he's lying down in front of the bulldozer to try to keep it from demolishing his house. And that's when Ford Prefect comes along and tells him, "Look, this doesn't really matter because the Earth is going to be destroyed in 10 minutes. And of course he doesn't believe him. But he takes him to a bar. He says, can we have a truce here for 10 minutes while I take him to have a drink at the pub?" And he does. And of course, while he's gone, they demolish his house. And he's freaked out about that. But Ford says, "Okay, 2 more minutes, you're not going to care."
Because you won't be here?
Everybody is, Ford saves him.
Right.
But everybody else in the bar, who hears this, some of them are getting a little nervous. But yeah, everybody's wiped out. But the irony is that the Vogons tell the Earthlings, the plans for this have been on file on this particular planet 17 light years away for years. Why haven't you looked there? And they go ahead and destroy the planet. So it's just the precise thing that happens in real life, but exaggerated.
Right. That's interesting. Well, and it also has that feeling of, we're down here laboring away. We're not ready for the pre-meeting, for the big meeting, and it's the most important thing that's ever happened to us, right? And things are happening not just in the world, but in the universe that don't care and that we can't stop.
Yeah, that are completely indifferent to human beings and their plans.
Right. The human infestation and their plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can see why you like that novel, because it probably is a worthwhile read at any time in your life to recenter you a little bit.
Yeah. What's really important?
Right. What is really important? What does the novel say?
Well,
is really
42
important?
is really important.
That's not helpful, Ruud.
I mean, I don't think there's an answer to that. There may be implications as to what things are important.
Right. Mucking about
And having fun, because that's smarter than some of the silly things that we might do and think we're doing something important.
The pre-meeting for the big meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a meme the other day about Mary Oliver's line about what will you do with your one precious life. And the meme said, she wasn't talking to you about making $1 billion. The answer in the poem is that she went to walk in nature.
Yeah.
It's like anything, it gets excerpted and misunderstood, maybe purposefully, but maybe mucking about in the sea or taking a walk in the woods.
Same kind of thing, yeah.
Well, and I think this is a time in our lives where we're talking about a lot about the uber rich and billionaires and, hoarding wealth and, this idea that I think a lot of times if you were important, you'd be rich and then I'd know you were important, right? And I wouldn't have to worry about you. And I just, if you're thinking about what's important to you, I'm not someone who wants a lot of money. I want enough money. I'm fortunate to have enough money to be safe, right? To eat food every day, have extra things in life.
Like 4 dogs.
Like 4 dogs and, occasional trips to Paris, which we just returned from a trip to Paris. But
that's mucking about and having fun.
That is mucking about and having fun. And that's what's important to me, right? And I think it's really interesting that there are people that think it's very important to have billions of dollars. And I'm not one of those people. And I'm just curious about what the novel communicates about what is important. Is it a way to say you should think about what's important to you? Or does the novel have a stance?
Well, it's not a clear stand, but I think the suggestion is that a lot of the things that are being poked fun at are not the things that should be important to you. The dolphins know what's important, and Ford Prefect seems to have a lot of fun in his life, and he doesn't do a lot of really serious things. So, yeah, I don't think it tells you these are what things are that are important, but characters that you like are doing things that they may like to do.
Right. So I said it wasn't didactic. It's also not prescriptive.
No.
But it's a delivery device for you to consider what you think, right?
And and to consider, even the earth is not all that important in the novel, mm-hmm. because it gets wiped out in the first few pages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. So it's not an environmental book.
No.
Even though the earth is for mice, it's not a way of saying, look, you're not the only people here. You have a duty to, or not the only creatures here. You're not the only life. All life is precious. You have a duty to the other. It's like, it's all of a piece.
Well, yeah. But I think there is that notion that the other animals are important, but that there are forces in the universe that really are completely indifferent to human beings and are completely indifferent to this little planet.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep that in our heads.
That's interesting too, because I told you when we went to Antarctica, I had such a profound sense that the earth itself is indifferent to us.
Yeah. Because
there's no development. We were in a couple places where there was a building, right? But like they'd say, we're going to put in at Port Charco or whatever, and we go there, and I was thinking of a port, right? There's not a port. It's just a place where the ship can go in and then the Zodiacs can go a little farther, right? There's nothing there. And it's just this giant...
Well, there's nothing man-made.
Right. There's nothing developed there. There's nothing that human people have built. And there are no humans living there. And when you go, you just see this lumbering, cold stone, ice, snow. And my just biggest sense of it was the earth does not care about us. And if we wipe ourselves off of it, the earth will just still be here lumbering along.
And those penguins will still be there.
I hope so. They are beautiful. They don't walk very well. Anyway,
they swim.
It's interesting because the book takes it as the whole earth, whereas, if you're on this earth and limited to it and can't go into space, there are places where you can have that experience, right? That you're just tiny.
Yeah.
And the earth doesn't care about you. And I think those experiences do make you think about your assumptions and how you want to live based on that insight. So, anything else that's lovable about the book before we talk about what might not be lovable?
Well, there are these incredibly clever things that Adams does that kind of answer sort of logical questions you might have about things that happen to humans in space. I mean, how when you're going to be dead in 20 seconds, if you're shot out of a airlock into the vacuum of space, what are the odds that another ship is going to come along and pick you up? Well, you have to have an infinite improbability drive in order for that to happen.
It sounds like it would be improbable, but apparently it's a non-zero number.
Yeah, it may be 1 to the 10 to the 98th power or something.
Right.
But it's not totally impossible.
Right.
Or how is Arthur Dent, this Earthling who speaks English, going to understand all these people from all these other planets when they have something to say? So Adams creates this thing called the babblefish.
Oh, okay.
Which goes into your ear and translates anything that is said into your language so that everybody seems to be talking to you in English. So there's those kind of little clever things are part of what's...
Where he's solving problems
Yeah.
through kind of clever invention.
Yeah. He's mucking about and having fun as he's solving these problems.
Well, I think all novels, I think if you're writing a novel and you're not having any fun, nobody's going to want to read that, even if it's not a comedic novel, right?
Yeah.
You should be exploring, right?
Yeah.
And having a good time. It should be a thought exercise for the writer, so it can be a thought exercise for the reader, right?
Yeah.
To commandeer Frost.
Exactly.
All right. Well, why might people not like this book? Wait, before we answer that, how long is this book?
It's not very long. I don't know the exact page numbers. Maybe around 200 pages.
Okay. So I thought it was
then,
not.
of course, there's 4 more.
Right. I didn't think it was very long, but I wanted to confirm that. So this would be the gateway drug for the series. If you don't like this, you're not going to go on. But if you want more of it, there's more for you to have.
There's plenty more.
Well, why might people not like this novel? Might not love this novel?
So I knew a guy once that I worked with cutting grass at the cemetery when I was in college. And he said, I just don't like to read fiction. I don't want to read anything that couldn't be true. I think if you have that attitude about reading, you're not going to like this book. But if you want to read something that's enjoyable and that's fun to read and that still makes you think this is the book for you.
Yeah, I think there are people who just are not going to go for this setting, right?
Yeah.
This situation setting. But it sounds like the book is very true.
It's true in its way.
Even if it's not factual.
Yeah.
So I think that's always a question. And like I said, I used to read a lot of fantasy and I don't really enjoy it as much anymore because I like the human interaction and the kind of settings with which I am familiar, right? But every once in a while I'll read something, that's fantastic.
And this is fantastic.
And it is, I will say that the difference for me is in the facility with language, right? And the cleverness and insight of the writer.
Yeah.
It's going to make the difference for me.
And there are kind of cultists who, may not be the greatest word, but there are people who follow this.
Yes.
Like it's their job. There are groups of people that on the 25th of May every year celebrate Towel Day.
Towel Day?
Carry a towel around them, yes, because it's explained in the trilogy. Adams calls it a trilogy, and here's the 4th book in the trilogy. Here's the 5th book in the trilogy. Right. Anyway, fans of it will carry towels around because it's Towel Day, and the thing that Ford Prefect tells Arthur Dent early on is that the most valuable thing for an interstellar hitchhiker to have is a towel, because you can do so many things with it. So always carry a towel with you when you're going into another planet.
All right. Well, May 25th, we'll have to observe Towel Day.
We'll bring our towels.
All right. All right.
All right.
So,
is it time for...
No, you have to rank this.
Oh, I have to rank
my dude.
I know this ranking thing.
So where is it going to fall on the list? It's behind what and in front of what?
I'm going to put this at number 17 right now.
Okay.
So it's right after Watership Down.
Oh, another fantasy.
Yes. And it's right above 1984.
Oh, very interesting. You kind of keep those in the same place in your brain, maybe, and they travel together on your list.
They travel with a towel.
Oh. All right. Well, that was very interesting. It's funny because I got it on the first clue, and yet I haven't read it. I think it's because you talk about it a lot.
Well, I don't know that I've ever mentioned the Infinite Impossibility Drive before.
Maybe not, but it just seemed Hitchhiker's Guidey.
All right. Okay. Time for Chaos Reader.
All right. So I received this book for Christmas, Elizabeth and Philip, A Story of Young Love, Marriage, and Monarchy by Tessa Dunlop. And I took it on our trip to Paris, and I didn't get too far in it. I'm on page 37. I used to read a lot on trips, but I think because of the iPhone and everything that's available to you on your phone all the time, I don't pick up a book at night. But I am enjoying it. I did read it on the plane because it's very easy to pick up and put down. And I think it's interesting because it's really just about the beginning of their relationship, I think. So it has a very specific focus. It's not that, it's not long enough to be about their whole lives. They were married for 70 years or something like that. So I think it's very interesting, and it's definitely about a certain period in time in Western culture, and this kind of prince and, European royal dude who didn't really have a country because his Greek, his connections with Greek royalty, they were overthrown, and he was in the British Navy, but when she met him, she was very young. She was in her teens the first time she met him, and it seems like she just always thought, that's the guy. And her father was reluctant for her to make, a commitment too young. But I'm just in the very beginning now. I don't think they've even started dating each other yet. So it's good. It's kind of written in a kind of chatty, conversational, almost gossipy style. Lots of interviews with people who, were contemporaries of theirs, and it's enjoyable. I'm loving it so far. So,
okay,
Elizabeth and Philip.
Cool.
Yeah, right up my street.
All right.
Well, we'd like to thank our podcast producing sensei, since we are doing a lot of it ourselves now. But he's always on call, Jerry Bruno, to help us with things we forget how to do or can't figure out. And we'd also like to ask our listeners and viewers to like, comment, share, and as I ask every week, if you could just tell one person that who loves books about our podcast, maybe send them an episode of a book they like or might be interested in, that will help our podcast grow. So,
yes. So if you like us, tell your friends.
It's very...
If you don't like us, tell your enemies. And
that's right.
They can... Right. They'll like us.
Yeah, make them suffer. It is very hard for small independent podcasts to break out. So we need our listeners to help us. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Between the covers.